when we see tanween, we're not going to see a noon sakina, right? We're going to see two fathat, two kasrat, or two damnat, right? However, when you say it, fathan, right, then you know that there is a noon sakina in the pronunciation, and that is what's going to make a difference for us. That's what's going to matter, okay? So we're on page 49, Brother Ali. Now 40, now 50. All right, so that was the first idea, that tanween هو حرف محرك ثم نون ساكنة. It's tanween is a harf with a haraka, a letter with a haraka, and then noon sakina. And so when we say ahkam noon sakina, the rules for noon sakina, I don't want to repeatedly keep repeating noon sakina and tanween, because that becomes a little bit tedious. So from now on, now that we know that in tanween there's a noon sakina, I'm just going to say ahkam noon sakina if that comes up, inshallah. Okay, so there's 4 rules, أربع قواعد for النون الساكنة. Okay. Yeah, so you can follow along with me here. إقلاب, إظهار, إظهار, إدغام, وإخفاء. إخفاء. Okay. So 4 different rules, and we're going to cover them as much as we can, inshallah, today. Okay, so before we get started, we need to define something called ghunna, right? Ghunna is a property of letters where the 2 letters specifically, the mim and the noon, okay? It's a property of these letters only, okay? Ghunna. The ghunna is when air is exiting through the nose, right? So when we say, for example, me, if you close your nose, you'll see how an essential property of the letter is the air that's flowing through the nose when you say mim and noon, right? So try to say ami, mi, amila, right? If you close your nose, it's not going to come out right. However, if I want to say autullin, right? When I got to the lin part, because there's a noon there, there is a problem, right? However, when I was saying autul, autul, my nose is completely closed, and there's no issue with the letter, with the pronunciation of any of the letters, right? So why is that? It's because ayn doesn't have ghunna in it, ta doesn't have ghunna in it, and lam doesn't have ghunna in it. So I can say autul without any issues whatsoever in the properties of each of these 3 letters, right? But when I try to complete that word from the Quran and say autul, lind, lind, it doesn't work, right? Because autul, lind, the tanween is a kasra on the lam and then a noon sakina. And when you try to say noon, you cannot say noon if you're closing your nose. An essential property of both noon and mim is a ghunna, which means a sound when the air exits from the khuyshum in Arabic or from the nose. Okay, so that is what ghunna is. It's a sound that the air makes when it comes out of the nose as opposed to from the mouth. Right? صوت يخرج من الخيشوم هو الغنة وهي صفة لحرف الميم وحرف النون بالتحديد. Okay. So one thing to keep in mind is that when we say the property applies to harf al-noon and harf al-mim only, that's not, I mean, that's what they say in the tajweed books, but that's not really entirely correct, right? The reason why is because a lot of the time a noon sakina gets deleted, but its ghunna is not. Okay, so harf al-noon, harf al-mim have 2 parts when we're pronouncing. There's a part that happens in your mouth, جزء فموي, well, there's a part that happens in the nose, جزء خيشومي. يعني it's 2 sounds at once, صوتين مع بعضهما البعض. يعني when those 2 sounds happen, you have a proper noon. When both sounds happen, you have a proper noon, right? Sometimes the hukm for the noon sakina is for the femoral part, the mouth part, to be deleted. We're not going to say that anymore in idgham and other stuff, right? However, in some cases, although the mouth part is deleted, the ghunna, the nose part of the letter, stays. Okay? So we will have cases where the ghunna is actually accompanying الغنة تأتي على حرف غير حرف الميم والنون. It comes on letters other than mim and noon, inshallah. So we'll see examples of that, inshallah, in a minute. So just to give you an example that they use here is لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ. Okay, لَتَرَوُنَّ. It's a vibration, sort of. It involves vibration, but the vibration is not the sound itself. The vibration is a result of the air coming out. لَتَرَوُنَّ. My intent is not to intentionally vibrate. Okay? يعني لا أحاول أن أذبذب فمي بشكل هو الذبذبة هي نتيجة تلقائية لخروج النفس من الخيشوم. You can't. That's what I'm saying. So the ghunna is an essential part of these letters. If you don't do the ghunna, then you're not going to have a noon.
Let's say you make a mistake.
Yeah, so close your nose and say it. It doesn't come out, right? So when you say la, part of it is the nasal aspect, okay, the ghunna. So if the ghunna is not coming out, the letter is fundamentally flawed. Like, it's not even recognizable anymore. I can't say it. Like, it blocks me at some point, right? لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ. You hear that noise that's coming out of my nose, accompanying the noon sound, the noon with a shadda. لَتَرَوُنَّ Yes. So technically speaking, the ulama say that there is you cannot measure a ghunna with harakat. What they say is, like, my teacher taught me, come and I will say it in front of you and you will hear it and master how long it should be from that, right? So that's very difficult, right? Because we don't all have the luxury of going to a qari and learning from him exactly what the measure is, like is it a nanosecond under this or nanoseconds over that, etc. So what we want to keep in mind is that this is a general approximation, okay? So yes, it is harakatayn, it's two harakas instead of one haraka. So instead of me saying, لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ, لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ, right? I would say, لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ, right? I'm stopping at the noon 2 times what I would stop at any other letter given the speed that I have chosen, right? So some of the things that happen in this chapter, in this level 4 book, some of the things they say in the book are problematic. So for example, like they say that its duration is 1 second, right? But as we all know, 1 second in tajweed doesn't really mean anything, because if you're going like a reading that's fast, 1 second could be too long. If you're going a really slow reading, it could be like shorter than a regular letter, right? So we don't want to measure it using seconds. So if you, the version of this book that we're going to be teaching our students, inshallah, this year, is going to be an updated version. So if they don't correct this in the updated version that you're going to be teaching from, please you correct it to your students, okay? Tell them it's not about a specific time. So when they say like it's approximately 1 second, that doesn't really mean anything, okay? Like it just doesn't make any sense. So you want to make sure that you're pointing out to them that whatever you choose to give each letter, we talked about the speed that you choose, right? What your choice is to give each letter, how long you're going to spend on each letter, you multiply it by about 2 instead of 1 only, right? Instead of reading for X amount of time for each letter, you go 2 times X, right? And again, keep in mind that I mean, just to kind of like say this, the ulama say that you shouldn't measure it with harakat, right? You should just listen to it and you'll get it by listening, inshallah. No? 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 Ahsant. Okay. So, ghunna is produced when these letters are not pronounced due to specific rules. But we will, so this is the reason why I'm saying this is because we talked about like it being specifically a rule for meme and noon. However, like I said, there are cases when we're going to have ghunna on non-meme and noon letters. Okay? We'll get to that in a minute, inshallah. And that's because the noon sakina is going to be deleted, and it's going to give its ghunna is going to stay, and it's going to give it to the next letter. And that next letter is not going to be meme nor noon. Okay. So again, the book defines the ghunna as limited to meme and noon mushaddada, and that is not entirely correct, right? So the ghunna is an aspect of meme and noon always. It becomes more pronounced and extended when we have ghunna, when we have meme and noon mushaddada, when we have the shadda, but it's a property of the meme and noon generally, okay? So also if you want to kind of flag that to make sure that you're not passing it forward if it doesn't get corrected in that book. So this is the strongest ghunna, the one with the shadda. But the ghunna is present in every pronunciation of these letters regardless of the presence of a shadda or not, okay? And again, you can test this very easily. Like you can say, try to say, ya murru. The shadda here is on the ra. So the meme, right? The meme has a dhamma. It's not mushaddada. Try to close your nose and say, ya murru. Ya mur, ya bu. Where is the meme, right? You can't say meme when your nose is closed, even when it doesn't have a shadda on it, and that shows you that it does have a ghunna, right? A ghunna, but it's not as pronounced of a ghunna as you find in the meme and noon al-mushaddadatayn. Yeah, try to close your nose completely, and you'll see that it doesn't come out properly. There's no it doesn't have its proper properties. Okay, so the book also says that its duration is 1 second, like we talked about. Please make sure that you're not passing that along to your students. So it depends on the speed of reading in tajweed, and you can never measure anything in Quran, tajweed, by time, like saying, 2 seconds, 1 second, 4 seconds, etc. That's not okay because it depends on the speed you choose, right? 1 second might be way too long sometimes, it might be way too short sometimes, depending on the speed of reading that you have chosen. Okay, so Brother Ali, in the book, if you can go to page 52, please. Yeah. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the first property that we're going to talk about is al-iqlab. So we have the rule on page 52 of grade 4. And the examples are on page 53. I think it's helpful to go through the examples before the rule. Okay, so I'm going to do that, inshallah. So technically speaking here, when we have muribin, right? That's technically what the word is. If it's followed by a ba, if the tanween, muribin, we said bin, the tanween is a letter that's muharraka, and a letter after it that is a noon sakina, right? So in pronunciation, always keep that in mind, right? So this noon sakina of this tanween, oh, you can't see what I'm doing here. 53, please. What's that? 53, please. Yeah. So this tanween, muri bin, right? So it has a ba with a kasra and a noon sakina. The noon sakina is qulibat. So it was turned upside down and it became something else, right? The noon sakina turned into a meme. Instead of saying muri bin, we say muri bin, okay? So the noon qulibat, it turned into a meme sound. The noon of the tanween, or the noon sakina generally, gets turned into a meme sound instead. Okay? Muribin. Okay? What accompanies this, you're not going to benefit from me here too much on this, okay? Because this is very complicated. You have to sit down with the rules in front of you, the different cases in front of you, and you have to practice. Right? So the benefit that you're going to get here is a first exposure. If you haven't been exposed to these rules before, this is all that you're going to get. You're not going to learn it here. Okay? You learn it through experience and practice. Okay? But generally speaking, the noon sakina in iqlab is turned into a meme sakina. Muribin. Instead of muribin, if the word muribin is followed by a ba. Okay, so what's right after the noon sakina is a ba, it gets flipped into a meme. Okay. So let's go to some examples, right? So technically speaking here, we would say, usually if there weren't a ba, we would say, layyan bi alsinatihim on the bottom. Okay? So, layyan, this is what we would usually say, right? But, as we can see here, there's the ba coming right after the tanween. The tanween ends with noon sakina, right? So, we don't say layyan, right? We say layyan bi, right? And the noon, qulibat, and became a meme, okay? Iqlab. We say iqlab, we turned it on its head, right? And so it became meme instead of a noon. So we say layyan instead of layyan because the following letter is a ba. The next example is again for alif, right? So qawlan baligha, right? So what happens when this happens in iqlab is three things. Instead of saying noon, we say meme. Okay, instead of saying noon sakina, which is what it usually is, we say meme sakina. We install a ghunna, layyan. That ghunna is an essential part of the correct pronunciation. It's an essential property for that letter. And finally, we extend it to harakat. Okay, just keep in mind that the ulama say it's not about, like you can't measure it with harakat. We're going to ignore that because we're bad students. Okay, so we're going to ignore that counsel and we're just going to say it's to harakat. Okay, so we say layyan bi alsinatihim, right? Min ba'sikum min. So I turned it into a meme instead of a noon. I don't say min ba'sikum, right? Because it's followed by a ba. It's a noon sakina followed by a ba, so iqlab has to be done. Min ba'sikum, min ba'sikum, min ba'sikum, okay? وأنبتت So here in this example, we have a noon sakina after the alif, after the hamza, and the noon sakina is followed by a ba, the letter ba. And so, instead of saying وَأَنْبَتَتْ, we say وَأَنْبَتَتْ, okay? And instead of saying وَأَنْبَتَتْ, right? We're extending it to harakat, we're turning it into a noon, and we're installing a ghunna, okay? The nasal sound is essential here, okay? So we want to make sure we're making the nasal sound. So the remaining letters, we say, so those are not related to alif and noon. So we say غُلْفًا غلف بل غلف بل زوج بهيج زوج بهيج. Okay, so just keep in mind the meme, the meme sakina, when it's followed by a ba, we do something called iqlab. Iqlab means instead of saying meme, noon, we say, instead of saying noon sakina, we say meme sakina. Instead of giving it one haraka, we give it harakatayn, and we install a ghunna. The air is supposed to be exiting from the nose, and that produces a sound that is called sound and vibration. But like I said when we were talking about ghunna, your intent should be for the air to exit from the nose. If you try too hard to make the nose vibrate, you're going to have a wrong property. You're going to install the wrong property to the letter. You're going to say something like qawlan, right? If you're trying to cause the vibration. The vibration will happen naturally as a result of the airflow from the nose. Okay, so don't try to vibrate, it will vibrate on its own. Okay? قَوْلًا بَلِيغًا. Okay. Sakina. Replaces the sukun. Okay, so this is very helpful for you to identify. So in the Quran, usually in most Qurans, they will help you identify the letters and words that have this kind of iqlab, right? So for noon sakina, they usually have an unconnected meme, right? Like a full meme. As Sister Bakr was saying earlier, you don't want to mistake the meme of waqf, which doesn't have a foot, for the meme of iqlab, which is a full meme that has a foot. Okay? We don't want that small meme, that's for waqf. That means you have to stop. You must stop. If you don't stop, there's no fiqhi issue, so you're not like gaining ithm or anything, right? You're just reading incorrectly, right? So just keep that in mind as well, so you don't freak out when you're reading the Quran, like, am I gaining ithm because I'm not applying these rules? Okay, so what they will give you is this. Oh, you can't see me. Can I have someone man the computer? Thank you, Brother Muhammad. If you can just go down to the next page, please. Yes, right. So in the middle, the third 3 lines down, you have غُلْفٌ بَلْ غُلْفٌ بَلْ, right? So this full meme, it has a dhamma, and then instead of another dhamma, which would have indicated a meme, usually, then regular tanween has a letter muharraka and then a meme sakina, right? So when we see a full tanween, 2 dhamma, we would think it's the letter itself muharraka followed by meme sakina. So what they do here is they give you one dhamma, and instead of the other dhamma, they put a full meme. Okay? So make sure that when you see that, you flip. That's what iqlab means, right? You flip the noon into a meme. You give it a ghunna, and you give it harakatayn in terms of duration instead of one haraka. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like, inshallah. When we have tanween fath, for example, it will they will, if you go down, Brother Muhammad, to the Brother Ali. No, up. Yeah, there it is. So in the bottom here, again, the third line at the end of the word, you have shahadatin billahi. Shahadatin. So you see here that instead of 2 kasra, they give you 1 kasra and a meme, so that they can caution you against saying the noon, right?
But if you go up a little bit, like on the ayah.
Brother Ali, please, if you can go up a little bit.
Sure. So the place where you have There's small mean there, right? Or
Yes, the small meme is for waqf.
Stop.
Right. So that's what I meant by small meme. This is at the end of the first line, one word before the end of the last line. We don't want to do iqlab there. That just means you must stop. Okay? So please make sure to distinguish between the full meme that we talked about, which is on line 3 in the word ayatin, right? And the partial meme, the small meme that you see for waqf.
So this mean can be like on top and bottom anywhere, right?
What? Yes. The meme of iqlab, you can see it on top, on bottom, wherever the other haraka is, right? However, the meme of waqf, you're not going to see it there. It's just going to be on top. Yes.
Also slightly differently shaped and higher. So it's not at the same level as the harakat, it's above the harakat.
Yeah. So it's above the harakat. That's a good way to distinguish it from the meme that you might find up there. But just keep in mind, one of them has a leg, right? Has a little stick coming down, and that is the one that we want for iqlab. A full meme munfasila bil lugha al-arabiyya. Meme munfasila that has a stick. Okay.
If I'm not going to wear my glasses, I'm going to see that name as a Dhamma.
Wear your glasses. Okay. So if you have a noon with not noon sakina, we're not talking about tanween. If you just have a noon sakina, it's the sukoon is replaced with a meme, with a full meme again. Okay, the same meme that we're seeing here that has the stick, it replaces the sukoon. So that tells you that you have to read it with iqlab. Okay, so that's if it's a noon sakina in the first place, not tanween. Okay, Brother Ali, if you can go to page 57, please. Okay. So like I said, in the way that I memorize, or the way that I learn, I try to figure out what is the default, and I ignore the default. I don't try to learn the default. Okay? So the default for me, with respect to huruf, what to do with the noon sakina, there's, like I said, there's 4 different categories, and so I take the most numerous one, and I ignore it. I consider it to be the default, right? So what does that mean? When you have noon, no. There we go. Okay. So, the ahkam of noon sakina, right? Whether it's tanween or that, or whether it's a noon sakina itself, right? How do we read the noon as sakina, right? There's going to be 4 different cases that we want to focus on, okay? So, and it all depends on what comes after, okay? What's the letter that's coming after the... Oh, yeah, I'll move it. It's okay.
This way.
No, we don't want to move this. So we have 4 different categories of letters that we have to keep in mind, right? The first one that we just learned is iqlab, right? Then, Brother Ali, without the mic, we're not recording, right?
Yes,
Okay. So the second one is إظهار. Sorry, just one second. إظهار. Huh?
Izhar?
Yes, this is how they write it out. Do you have a better way of writing the in English? DH? Okay, yeah, this is how they write it in linguistics.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like, you know.
that's fine, that's fine. If it's easier to, DH you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, I would write the that way, not the. But at any rate, it doesn't really matter. In the book, they write it with a Z and a dot under it. That's why I wrote it that way.
They write like Abu Dhabi that way, so that's why, in English.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, truly.
Okay. So.
It's like we'll go against, they're writing DH, so we're going to say C with a dot.
So I just want to give some examples. Of iqlab. Right? So if we have ayatin bayinat, right? So instead of having a full two kasras for the tanween, what you'll find in the Quran, inshallah, is one and amim, right? Ayatin. Okay, so what we do here, the hukm is read mim instead of mim plus two harakat. Instead of one, and then finally ghunna. Okay, when you see ghunna in the Quran, generally speaking, when you see ahkam al-tajweed, it's going to be two harakat. Okay, so with iqlab, as we talked about, one example, ayatin bayyinatin. Okay, so we're going to do it. We're going to switch, we're going to do qalb, or switching, turning the meen into a meen, the meen of the meen here, right? Instead of saying ayatin, the meen sakina turns into a ayatin, which is a meen. We're going to do three things. We're going to turn it into a meen, we're going to give it two harakat instead of one, and finally, we're going to make sure to read a ghunna with it. Okay, we're not going to say we're not going to say without the ghunna, right? Ayatin bayyinat. Just make sure the air is flowing through your nose. That's all you have to do. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, that's number one. Number two is izhar. Okay, and that by popular demand, is going to be spelled this way. Right? That's what you guys want? Like 2H? Okay.
We can change it now because Abu Dhabi is already using it.
Okay. So let me see if I can find an example with La'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimeen. Never mind. Okay. So that's iqlab. Izhar, just keep in mind that in the book it's spelled with a Z. I'll just like leave that here, right? So that nobody's confused. Okay. So with izhar, we're just reading the noon like we would normally in the Arabic language. We're not changing the noon in any way. The noon by its property has a ghunna, and so it's a very limited ghunna as opposed to the ghunna that that we're doing here, right? So, but just don't worry about that. Just read the noon normally, right? And that should be more than enough, inshallah.
For then you can use the izhar, but you have to just make sure that you pronounce the for then in that manner. Like with izhar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it comes out like for quote unquote 2 haraka.
Min ayyi. So min ayyi. So there's no extension. It's just one haraka for the noon itself, right? Example. Min. Ayyi. Min ayyi. Min ayyi. Right? Although it has a ghunna, that's just an essential property of the noon itself, right? We're not extending it, we're not doing anything special with it. So you can just like take it out of your mind. Actually, when they teach, usually, I see a lot of videos where they tell you like there's no ghunna, right? But again, just keep in mind that like the ghunna is actually an essential property of the noon itself, even when nothing's happening to it in tajweed particularly, right? Min ayyi hamimin, min hamimin, min, regular noon, okay? Man khalaqata, man, okay? An ghadiba, na'udhu billah. Tanhar, okay? Tanhar, again, regular noon. Nothing is being changed. Now, what remains is for us to remember the letters, okay? So, here we have a noon sakina or tanween, and it is followed by a specific set of letters in order for it to be, for the hukm for this noon to be izhar. Okay? So,
Brother Ali, sometimes in some mushafs, like you have a small noon at the bottom of the eye, just like you had the meme with the iqlab. What does that noon mean?
can you find me an example?
I'll probably send you a picture.
Yeah, please. If you can do it on the group, and then I can respond on the group so others can benefit, inshallah. Okay, so in izhar, the letters, for us, for the hukm of the noon sakina to be izhar, it has to be followed by these letters, right? So the ha, or sometimes it's written like this, right? So ha, hamza, ha, and now it becomes very difficult to kind of like distinguish them from each other in English. Kha, and then ayn, and ghayn. Okay? And those are all halqi letters. Okay? So just make sure that when you see these letters, and this is just a matter of memorizing, right? You just have to memorize that these letters, it comes out izhar, right? If you have one of these books where they color code the text for you, it might be helpful at the initial stage to just kind of get the hang of it, right? To train, and then like your mind kind of just eventually trains. However, at some point you want to get rid of the color coding and be able to do it yourself, right? You don't want to like be in a position where you're dependent on like, because then you're not really like understanding the rule, like your recitation is lacking, right? So we want to make sure that if you're reading with those books, you use them as a crutch at the beginning so that they can help you, and then you can, like the extra third wheel for kids like bicycle, for example, Hmm? Yes, what?
It's not falqi.
Qa is from the back of the mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Qaw.
Qa. So it's not like it's not from the throat, right? Qa. It's from the exact back of the mouth, right? Yeah. So, and keep in mind that like, yeah. Okay, I don't want to go through that. So what we're going to be doing here is we want to memorize these 6 letters. Okay, those are the letters of idhar. Okay, so we're just going to leave it at that for now. There's some exceptions. I will send them in the group, but I don't want to complicate this too much and cause confusion. Okay, so when we see these letters, we do idhar. In other words, the letter comes out normal. Okay, now the third hukm is extremely complicated, which is idgham, and what we are supposed to do with it. Okay? So I'm going to jump to the last one and then come back, inshallah. So for me, because ikhfa, the letters that cause ikhfa in the noon that comes before them, that's the most numerous group of letters. So I don't memorize those. Okay, so I don't worry about memorizing huruf al-ikhfa. I take that to be the default. I just do ikhfa generally. However, if I find a rule that tells me, no, don't do ikhfa, do iqlab, I'll do iqlab. If I find a rule that tells me don't do ikhfa, do idhar because of these letters, so I memorize these letters and these letters, and when I encounter these letters, I don't do ikhfa. Right? You don't have to do this yourself. You can find other ways. If you're one of those people who memorizes easily and you want to memorize 15 letters, please, by all means, that's probably helpful, right? But that's just what I have found to be helpful, inshallah. And when you do this with practice, it eventually kind of sticks, okay? So these are the huruf al-iqlab and huruf al-idhar, right? So when we say huruf al-iqlab, harf al-iqlab is the ba. Right? So when we say huruf al-iqlab, we mean that when this letter comes after a noon sakina, this is what we do. Right? So when one of these letters comes after a noon sakina, we do idhar. Right? So I'm going to erase this now, and we're going to focus on the, actually, you know what? So with respect to ikhfa, I'll cover the third case, and then the fourth case, inshallah, we'll do like the full board. So I'll erase for the fourth case. But for the third case, it's not too complicated. So ikhfa, right? So ikhfa, right? So what you're doing with ikhfa is you're putting you're lifting. So if you remember, the noon is about touching the tongue to the top of the mouth, right? That's what produces the n sound, okay? With ikhfa, and again, this takes some practice. You know, the tongue is a muscle. The more you practice with this muscle, the more you can do with it, the more you can control it, right? It doesn't go places on its own. Right? For most people, when they're not training their tongue, when they're not practicing, their tongue kind of just goes places on its own, right? They try to like do something, you know, like their aim is not very specific and accurate. So they'll just kind of like, you know, do it. Sometimes it comes, it hits this makhraj, sometimes it hits like a little bit further, sometimes. And people, when we're doing lahjat, when we're speaking in our own dialects, people don't care what you say. Right? Generally speaking, nobody's going to be like, no, brother, you know, this letter, it can't be like this, it has to be like that. You hit it like, one whatever distance away from the makhraj, correct it, etc., etc. We don't correct each other, unfortunately, in the lahjat, right? And so what ends up happening is that we don't really master the control of this muscle, because accuracy is not required of us. We're not being corrected. People understand what we're saying even if we speak incorrectly, hit the wrong makhraj, put our tongue in the wrong place. And so this muscle doesn't get practiced, and therefore it doesn't get strong. Our control of it is not very intentional, right? We just kind of throw the tongue up and it hits somewhere. People understand what we're saying. We're like, alhamdulillah, and we keep going, right? So when we're reading Quran, this practice of reading Quran is about correction. Right? So the more you do this, the more control you'll have of this muscle. Okay? So when I first tried to do ikhfa, I found it to be near impossible, right? Because I hadn't trained the muscle of my tongue for me to be able to control it intentionally, right? So I found it impossible to lift the tongue up. Actually, we have this here. Okay. So with a regular noon, what we have is just lift it like that, is the tongue hitting on top, touching the top of your mouth. Okay, that's a regular noon. Na, 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 na. Right? Clearly the tongue is hitting on the top, and that's what produces the regular noon. What's the regular noon? It's this one, idhar. Idhar, right? So the idhar noon is the regular noon, right? The tongue goes up, hits the top, touches fully, right? Anhar, right? I'm touching my tongue to the top of my mouth. When we do ikhfa, right, instead of touching, you're supposed to lift it up, but not actually touch, right? Prevent it from actually touching. Right? So, okay. Yeah, this is the rule of Noon Sakina, right? So here are some examples. Brother Muhammad, if you can go to page 64, please. So some examples of ikhfa, okay? So what we say is, too much. Okay, my tongue. I'm making sure that it goes up, but the flow of air is not interrupted. Like and the flow of air in the mouth in idhar is interrupted, and that pushes a lot more air to go out from the nose. Okay, try it. And say it incorrectly, for example, or man, or an. The air is coming out of the nose primarily. Okay? Right? However, when you do ikhfa, the airflow in the mouth is not blocked. Okay? It's constricted, it's small, but it's not blocked all the way. So instead of going anta, completely touching, and that causes the air to go through the nose, right? Instead of doing that, what we want to do is lift it up, but not closing that airway, right? The air still has a place to flow. يعني لا نحبس النفس كليا هنا, right? So we say أنت أنثى أنثى من جاء من right? It's not man. If you can hear the difference. difference. I'll say it incorrectly. Man ja'a, man, there's this. My tongue is not touching on the top, but it is lifted up and very close to the top of my tongue. Okay? So, anta, unsa, man ja'a, mundu, not mun is the correct thing to say. Okay? So, when we have ikhfa, we basically have the same thing that's going to happen in iqlab, right? So we're going to do, well, instead of, without the iqlab though, right? So we're going to give it 2 harakat and install a ghunna, right? So we give it 2 harakat, ghunna, and we're not going to touch our tongue to the top of our mouth. Right, so I'll rewrite it here.
Brother Ali, like in this ayah, wa inna ila rabbina lamunqalibun.
Yeah.
The munqalibun
It's ikhfa, yes. Lamun, we can't say lamun, we can't say lamun qalibun, mun, because the qaf is one of the letters of ikhfa. Right? So we say lamun qalibun. Okay, so number 1, say noon without the tongue touching the top of the mouth. Number 2, 2 harakat. Number 3, ghunna. Okay, so these are the 3 things that we do with ikhfa. We lift the tongue up without touching. We try to say a noon without touching our tongue to the top of the mouth. We also give it 2 harakat and we install a ghunna. Okay? Munqalibun.
There's some
I forgot about that.
food, some snacks for people if you want to grab with like the prayer.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to start right at there because, yeah, we're here for Quran, inshallah. Okay, so ikhfa. This is the, how long do we have for salat?
15 minutes.
Okay, that should be 1/3 of what I need. Okay. So again, keep these in mind. It's the iqlab and ikhfa are very similar, except that what you're doing with your with your tongue is important in ikhfa, and switching the noon into a noon is what's relevant in iqlab, right? But in terms of the properties of the sound that's coming out, it's going to have 2 harakat and ghunna, okay? 2 harakat and ghunna. And like I said earlier, that usually goes without saying. If somebody says like in tajweed there's a ghunna, it usually means 2, yes. As Brother Muhammad Hassan is explaining here. Okay, so those are the 3 of the cases. The most complicated case is what remains for us now, inshallah.
What happens when the noon sakna is followed by the letters that are not in the idhar?
In the idhar or iqlab or idgham. So it's a lot. It's a lot to keep in mind. So if this doesn't help you, if like because there's so many other cases and so many other letters, you're not able to say like, oh, and what's left in your mind, then you might want to just learn the huruf of ikhfa. Okay? So okay, so we pull our tongue up, but we don't actually touch it. That's what ikhfa ultimately boils down to. Okay, so with respect to idgham, thank you, brother. Jazakallah khair, inshallah.
Please give him a pediatric, right?
I'm sorry?
Give her those pediatric, right? Cannot
Dada? Dada? Dada أبو علي خذ يلا محي معي يلا محي محمد في عندك بطارية تحت ما عم تشحن؟
بطارية
هذه صارت حمراء. Okay, so with respect to idgham, this is the fourth letter. We're talking about rules for noon sakina. Okay, I'll write some stuff. Thank you. أحسنت. تتا هيدا بس هو مش للأكل مش للأكل. Okay, so generally speaking, the ahkam, the sound that's supposed to come out with the idgham is there's a mouth sound to it and there's a nose sound to it. The nose sound is called ghunna, right? We'll see in a minute that like this is not entirely true because there is idgham without a ghunna, okay? But let's just bear here. Here, I'll just put with exception of lam and ra. Okay, so idgham. The first thing you have to memorize is these letters. وين رايح أستاذ؟ يرملون. Right? يا را ميم لام واو and nun. Okay, those are the letters. If you encounter any of these letters after a noon sakina, which again, keep in mind, also includes tanween, right? What we do is, the hukm for these, let me try to find one that actually, yes, yes. So, this, okay. One, letters come after the noon sakina, we do idgham. Okay, so when these letters, ya, ra, mim, lam, waw, and noon come after a noon sakina, we do idgham. Okay, so those are the letters that we're interested in, and you have to memorize them. They're summarized by the word yarmulun to make it easy for you, right? So when you come across noon sakin in the Quran, you can just easily say like yarmulun in your mind and check whether you're going to do idgham or not, right? So one important thing to keep in mind, okay, this has to be, here I'll say necessary condition for applying idgham. One of these letters comes in the next word. Okay? So, in the next word. We're not talking about, a noon sakina followed by a ya inside the same word. Right? We're talking about the next word. Okay? So this is an important reminder here. Okay.
One of the words.
So we wouldn't say, for example, like the word is no. So we wouldn't say if this is the word qinwan, right? So here we have a noon sakina followed by a waw, right? So we wouldn't say qinwan. We wouldn't do idgham here, right? Waw, we have a noon sakina. It's followed by a waw, right? But the condition that must be met is that the noon has to be at the end of the word and the waw has to be at the beginning of the next word, right? Not within one word, right? So here we would just read regular qinwan, right? We wouldn't do idgham.
Like Muhammad, you
Yes, ikhfa, iqlab, all of those happen across wherever you find them, basically. With idgham specifically, it's only at the end of the word, and then one of the letters yarmulun have to be at the beginning of the next word, right? Not within one word. فيجب أن تكون في آخر الكلمة النون الساكنة وأحد أحرف يرملون يبدأ الكلمة التي تليها. So there's something like there's a complicating factor in this, right? The words. So we have two kinds of idgham. There's idgham kamil, idgham naqis. Okay, idgham kamil. So complete idgham versus incomplete idgham. Okay? So what this is really about is whether there's a ghunna or not, technically speaking, but there's a complicating factor. Okay? So I'm just going to go through step by step so we don't miss something. Is Salat in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
5? Okay. you know what, I'm just gonna shift here just a little bit. And what we're gonna do is, we're gonna say that actually, I'll just keep that. Okay. Complete idgham versus incomplete idgham. Okay? So like we said, the noon sakina has two aspects to it. There's a mouth aspect and there's a nose aspect, right? Which is the ghunna, right? So what we mean when we say complete idgham is that they're both deleted. Okay, they're both gone, right? So, both the mouth and nose, which is the ghunna, sounds of the noon sakina are gone. Right? We're not interested in any part of the noon sakina anymore, right? With idgham kamil. Okay? With incomplete idgham, only the mouth aspect of noon sakina is gone. The nose part remains, which is the nose part of the sound is the ghunna. Okay. The letters here are noon, mim, lam, ra. Okay? In these letters, we have complete idgham, which means that for the noon sakina that precedes these letters, for the noon sakina that precedes them, both the ghunna has been removed and the mouth aspect of the noon has been removed. Nothing of that noon remains. Okay? Nothing of that noon remains. Now, one thing that confuses most people is that although nothing of the previous noon, including its ghunna, remains, we still have ghunna in noon and noon. Can somebody tell me why? Yeah, because noon and noon have ghunna. They have ghunna. Right? So we're no longer talking about the previous letters ghunna. The previous letters ghunna was gone. Khalas, we're done with it. We throw it away. Right? However, we still have ghunna. Some people are confused. Like, oh, I thought this was complete idgham, so the ghunna was removed. Why are we still doing ghunna with the noon and the noon? It's because these letters become mushaddada, and therefore they have a ghunna of its own. So it's the ghunna is not the previous noon sakinas. That was gone. We got rid of it. The ghunna that remains is the ghunna of the next letter. It just happens to be a noon or a mim in this case, and it has a ghunna because now it's mushaddada.
It's kind of like they have two makhraj, from nose and from
Yes. So yes. So because it's a noon and a noon and it's mushaddada, there's still a ghunna, although we did complete idgham, complete deletion, let's say, right, of the previous noon sakina. Okay? Is that clear? This is very confusing. Okay? We'll give examples inshallah after salat because I have adhan right now. Okay. It's always best to do salat on time, inshallah. Even if we think that if we finish up, it would be more convenient. But Allah knows best, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
صدق.
وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول